would like to introduce to you our speaker. Now, he's been here before, but if you don't know, I want to give you a little bit of background about this wonderful speaker. Dr. Nathaniel Bryan is an associate professor of early childhood education in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Texas, Austin. His scholarship focuses on the investigation of 3 interrelated research ideas. 1, the constructed identities and teaching styles of Black male teachers in early childhood education. 2, the lived schooling, critical literacy development, and Black boyhood play. And 3, teacher preparation for urban early childhood education to better address the needs of Black boys. Dr. Bryan also authored Toward a BlackboyCrit Pedagogy, Black Boys, Male Teachers, and Early Childhood Classroom Practices. Dr. Bryan also serves on the editorial board of the Journal of African American Males in Education. He has presented nationally and internationally on equity and diversity issues and the schooling experiences of Black boys. He has received prestigious awards such as the 2020 Emerging Scholar Award from the American Educational Association's Special Interest Group. Critical Perspectives on Early Childhood Education. Please grant our speaker a warm re-welcome to our honorable guest, Dr. Bryan, as he helps us confront the injustices of Black boyhood play and early childhood education. Get those digital hands clapping as we give our speaker the floor. Thank you, Dr. Bryan, for being here with us.
Thank you, Elijah, for such a beautiful introduction. And I'm really excited about being here. Again, I could not resist this opportunity to share with this community again. Normally, I take the month of July off in preparation for the upcoming school year. But when I received the invitation to share with the Early Care and Learning Council, I again could not resist the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you today, but I want to let you know that I see today's conversation is just that, a conversation between us. So at any point, feel free to chime in to the discussion as we embrace this very important topic. I want to really thank first and foremost, the Early Care and Learning Council, particularly Mrs. Fanny Glover, for inviting me here, and for all those who have supported her in this effort, including Elijah Folks and Naya Booker. So again, thank you all for inviting me here, and thanks to all of you for being here. It tells me that this is a topic of interest and a topic that we must address in society and schools, and particularly early child education, where play is foundational to the learning and social experiences of children. And so without further ado, I'm gonna share my PowerPoint so we can start this very important conversation. All right, so I want to talk with you briefly, and I don't think an hour is sufficient to really engage this topic. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about confronting the injustices of Black boyhood play and early child education. And before I begin, I think it's important to address a few of the operative words that you see listed here on the PowerPoint. And I want to talk a little bit about this notion of injustice or injustices. And when we think about injustices, it's important to really think about the inequities that Black boys face as they play. And we know that Black boys do enjoy play and recreation, but we must be honest about the systems that prevent Black boys from playing. And I believe that if we address the systems, these institutional systems and institutional inequities that prevent Black boys from playing, Black boys may enjoy playing even the more. And I also want to talk to you about this notion of Black boys. Oftentimes we have this one-dimensional view of Black boys, but I want us to think or expand our definition of Black boyhood and Black boys, because Black boys are diverse. They come with many different social identities. Although we've been socialized in thinking about Black boys in one-dimensional ways, I want us to understand that Black boys come to schools, come to our communities with many different social identities, and that we must value all of those identities that Black boys bring to schooling spaces. And because the focus here is on Black boys, this is not to ignore the injustices that Black girls and other marginalized children face in and beyond early child education. So this work is also a homage to Black girls and other children who face injustices as they attempt to enjoy play experiences. And the word play is very important to address here too. I want us to expand our definition of play. Play is multidimensional, right? It cuts across age groups. It is very diverse, right? And so we have to honor the diversity of childhood play as well. And so when we think about play, I don't think we should solely focus on the physical activity of play, but also see that play is also linguistically structured as well, or we should honor the words that children play with as they engage in play. So understand that play is very diverse, and that we should honor the diversity of play, much like we honor the diversity of Black boy and Black boyhood. I want to engage you by first asking you to participate in this presentation. So I want you to take a few minutes to think about one of your most memorable childhood play experiences. Elijah asked you to list off the games and activities you enjoy playing, but I want you to take a few moments just to think about one of your most memorable childhood play experiences. So take a moment, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute yourselves and share that experience, and maybe we'll have an opportunity for maybe 3 or 4 participants to share those experiences, and others may also list those experiences in the chat. So take about a moment to think about your most memorable childhood play experiences, and then we will come back as a collective group to share those experiences. Thank you. Who would like to share their most memorable childhood play experience? Any brave souls? So let's look in the chat. There's several of you. One person says that they can remember playing handball at the local school. Another person talks about her experiences playing hide and seek with cousins. Another person talks about playing baseball at the corner lot. And another person talks about dressing up with his or her sister. Yeah, those are all powerful memories of childhood play. And I do see Roxanne is raising her hand. Yes, Roxanne, please share.
I spent a lot of time playing by myself, using rocks and sticks, and I would play a game called Rocks or People or Sticks or People, depending on how many rocks or sticks I had. And it was all just inside my own head, and it was very, very fun.
Thank you so much for sharing that joyous childhood play experiences. And much like you, I too enjoyed play as a young child. And you see a picture of me in my kindergarten regalia, but I could recall spending lots of playtime in my community on this playground called Mall Park. And Mall Park is where I experienced the joy of Black boyhood play. But I also recall an incident that when I was playing, cops invaded the playground and asked my cousin and I, who were playing on the swings, to lie down on the ground. They were actually searching for someone who had escaped from the local jail. But that particular experience was traumatizing, and it interrupted my play experiences. And even as a Black male in my 40s, I still remember the trauma of that one event as I attempted to play in my community. But much like that play experience, Black boys in schools' play experiences are often interrupted. They often face trauma. I want you to listen to this video about the experiences of Bryce Lindley.
At number 2, a mother says it was supposed to be a game, but now her 10-year-old son is facing playground assault charges.
He is charged with aggravated assault, accused of throwing a ball and aiming for another student's face.
7 Action News reporter Jen Shans heard from both sides tonight. She's live in Canton with a look at how this all started. Jen.
Well, Dave, Carolyn, those two boys were playing outside here at Erickson Elementary back in late April when this all happened. But it wasn't until 2 days ago that one of the child's mother, Kamishi Lindley, learned that her 10-year-old was charged with aggravated assault in juvenile court.
These kids are basically playing a game that we all have played.
But on April 29th, what seemed like a harmless game ended with one student getting seriously hurt. According to the boy's mother, who asked we not show her face, he has a rare medical condition, making head injuries especially dangerous. According to a police report, during that game, another student threw a ball at his face on purpose.
He sustained facial tissue damage to his face. He had a black eye and a bruised nose.
Records show the then 4th grader also suffered a concussion. His condition is something Kamishi Lindley says she and her son, Bryce, knew nothing about. Wednesday, Bryce was charged with aggravated assault.
I couldn't believe it.
This is on top of a 1-day suspension, which occurred right after the incident.
This is a kid that was playing on the playground with his friends.
I tried not to let it get to this point.
This mother claiming her son had been hurt before and that she reported it to the school.
My son was hit twice in the face with a ball previously due to this, and the child apologized to my son, and he said, "Mom, it's okay. We're still going to be friends."
I'm unaware of any of those situations. Sorry that her child got hurt. I'd be sorry for any child that got hurt.
Lindley just wishes problems like this could be solved in the classroom, not the court. Now, both parents are telling me this situation has really affected their kids' ability to enjoy school and look forward to the start of the next school year. Meanwhile, this case will be in juvenile court August 1st for a pretrial hearing. In Canton tonight, Jen Shantz, 7 Action News.
All right, thank you so much, Jen.
At number 2.
While this particular experience not only alludes to a conversation about the preschool to prison pipeline where children of color and particularly Black males are funneled from early childhood classrooms into the criminal justice space, but it also warrants a conversation of what scholars suggest is the spirit murder of Black boys and other minoritized children. And what I mean by spirit murder, I am talking about this physical and psychological trauma that basically prevents Black boys and other children of color from living their full humanity. It also impedes them from experiencing academic and social possibilities and uplift in and beyond early child education. So our job is to ensure that we prevent the kinds of spirit murders that Black boys may experience in and beyond early child education. But it's not only an indication of spirit murder, it is also what scholars suggest as the afterlife of slavery, or living and playing in the afterlife of slavery. And what they mean by living and playing in the afterlife of slavery, it has to do with these institutional inequities that were put in place centuries ago that still negatively impact children, and particularly Black boys, when they play. So it's this, what they call this racial calculus and this political arithmetic that were entrenched centuries ago, but yet have a negative impact on the childhood play and other experiences of children. So we have to ask this question: what does it say about a nation that criminalizes Black boys? And so often we require our children to cite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, etc. And one part of the pledge says, "and liberty and justice for all." We we cannot say that when we criminalize Black boys, that they are afforded the right to liberty and justice for all. So we have to understand that our criminalization, the injustices of Black boyhood play not only contribute to their spirit murder, but it limits their full humanity. It limits their rights to liberty and justice for all. And I want to talk a little bit more and give you some more background about Black boyhood play. But first, I want to just talk about childhood play just a little bit more, because when we think about childhood play within the context of early childhood education, it is foundational to early childhood education and elementary education. And we know that when young children and all children enjoy and experience play, they benefit academically and socially. There are several studies that suggest that when children have access to play and recreation, they can improve their academic outcomes in all academic areas, including math and reading. So imagine when children are prevented from playing, how it negatively impacts their academic experiences. And then we typically talk about this academic achievement gap, which I argue there's no such thing as an academic achievement gap. There's an opportunity gap. That means that there are some children who have more opportunities than others, right? So we have to dispel this myth of an academic achievement gap, because when we use the language of academic achievement gap, we problematize children. We see the problem or locate the problem in children rather than the systems that prevent the children from gaining the academic and social skills that they need to successfully navigate school. So again, childhood play is foundational to early childhood education, and it includes a host of benefits that children could possess, right? And I would also like to say that childhood play is actually a white property. That means white children benefit from play more so than other children, including Black boys, right? If you do a mere Google search of images of children, you're going to see a host of images of white children. And that sends a message about whose play styles and behaviors we value in and beyond early childhood education. And so because play is a white property, we have to understand that it really creates some misperceptions of Black boyhood play in society at large, right? And so when we center or promote white children's play as the norm, it causes us to misperceive the play styles and behaviors of Black boys. So we classify those behaviors as bad or dangerous, etc. And then it also impacts, because in larger society, because of these dominant negative views of Black boyhood play, it also impacts the way that teachers, early childhood teachers in particular, perceive the play styles and behaviors of Black boys. Most teachers, early childhood teachers, see Black boyhood play in very deficit ways, right? And it does negatively impact, because of those views, the ways in which Black boys play. So, and you might be familiar with the Yale Child Study, but this also reinforces how teachers negatively perceive Black boyhood play. Let's take a listen.
There's a new study out of the Yale Child Study Center that I had to read a few times just to believe what it was telling me. The researchers recruited about 135 preschool teachers. They had them watch video footage of 4 kids playing: a Black boy, a Black girl, a white boy, and a white girl. And they told the teachers, their subjects, watch the video, there may be some challenging behaviors. As soon as you see something that could become challenging, hit the enter key on your keypad. Well, here's the trick. There was no challenging behavior. The researchers were using eye scan technology to see which child the teachers were looking at the most. And what they found is that the teachers, both white and Black alike, spent the most time watching the Black boy, waiting for bad behavior that never came. There's one more really interesting headline in this study, which comes later. The teachers were also given a 1-paragraph description to read of a hypothetical child with a stereotypical name who behaves pretty badly in class, pushes, scratches, throws toys. And some of the teachers were also given some biographical information that helped make sense of that behavior. They were told that the child lives with his mother, father has been in and out for years, they're relatively poor, the mother is depressed, works 3 jobs. Researchers wanted to know if knowing this information made the teachers more empathetic to the kid. Well, here's the shock. It did, but only if the teacher and the child were of the same race. If the teacher and the child, a white teacher and a black child, or even a black teacher and a white child, knowing that biographical information, those teachers were less empathetic towards those students. And here's why this matters. Imagine if this is true, if there's this empathy deficit in preschool, well, imagine where else that's true.
I really like the question, if there's this empathy deficit in preschool, I wonder where else that empathy deficit exists, right? And so this explains why there is no empathy and compassion for Black men, because as early as early child education, Black boys are seen in deficit ways, and they're not afforded the privileges they're not afforded the empathy like their counterparts, I should say. And because I understand teacher biases and stereotypes, and I wanted to understand the consequences of teacher biases and stereotypes, I conducted a study with early childhood teachers, both Black and white, to determine what consequences Black boys face still as a result of teacher biases and stereotypes. So I had, again, an opportunity to interview 5 teachers who were both Black and white about the restrictions that that they created for Black boys as Black boys attempted to engage in childhood play. And here is what I learned. I learned that Black boys encountered what I call the 3 anti-Black misandric restrictions. And I will talk a little bit about anti-Black misandry a little bit, but just to note that anti-Black misandry has everything to do with this racialized and gender disdain for Black boys, right? So I will talk a little bit more about anti-Black misandry, but I want to focus now on these 3 restrictions. And the first one is Black boys encountered this restriction of time. They encountered this restriction of space, and they encountered this restriction of interactions. And so I want to share the voices of the teachers who admitted that they were complicit in creating these restrictions for Black boys in early childhood spaces. And so we have here Jerry, who's an African-American male teacher who had been teaching for 3 years. And this is what he says. And he was talking about his experience, starting his job and entering into a schooling space that already had rules in place about how Black boys should be treated. And so Jerry related, he said, because it was like a school-wide plan when students misbehaved, I would not take all the boys' playtime away from them, but I would tell them they had to spend 5, 10, or even 15 minutes standing against the wall. So here we see that the Black boyhood's access to time, or the playtime, was truncated. They were only able to play for a particular amount of time in the classroom. And this was a form of punishment, right? Taking play away from young children. And we know that there's a struggle for the integration of play and recreation in early childhood education, because the playtime is being replaced with academic time in preparation for national and state level exams, right? And so we're taking the joy of play away from children to inundate them with academic experiences, not understanding that play is already an academic phenomenon. Right? So Jerry admitted that he took playtime away from his Black boys as a form of punishment. And Karen, who's a white woman, and she also admitted that, she punished her Black boys during class. And she said, and this was talking about one of the experiences that she had with a Black boy student. She said, like I told him, if he didn't do his work, like he can play, but he will only play the last 10 minutes of recess, again, taking away the playtime of Black boys, which again, negatively impacts their experiences. So it's not only this restriction of time, but there's also this restriction of space, right? And so here is what Jerry says. He says, so when I was in my internship, we had the Black boys take laps around the playground. And then once I started teaching, it would be sitting on the wall. I remember times when I would have them sitting on the wall and watching other classes play. And I'm like, what did I really accomplish? What was the goal? Was the behavior fixed by me making them sit on the wall? So here you see Jerry restricted this space in which Black boys could play. He had, or not even play, but he had them to stand against the wall or sit against the wall as an act of punishment. That means restricting the play spaces. But one thing I do like about what Jerry has done is that he's really critical of his own practice. He begins to begin to ask himself, well, what is the purpose of this? Did my students really learn from my restriction of their play spaces, right? And there's another incident of a participant admitting that she restricted the play space of her students. This is Phyllis, and Phyllis is a white female teacher who had been teaching for about 10 years in a school in the early childhood space. And she said, and I also used exclusionary practices my first 2 years of teaching. That was just what was used at our school, and nobody ever told me what else to do. So when I had kids hitting each other, kids punching each other, it was like I didn't know what else to do other than to have them sit on the bench or to have them to stand on the wall. And like Jerry said, that didn't fix the problem, having them stay on the wall or anything. So here we see Phyllis again admitting that she's restricting the space of Black boys, restricting them from playing, right? Excluding them to a particular space, which to me is dehumanizing. So if young children, particularly Black boys, are excluded spatially, imagine the messages that we are sending to them about their play styles and behaviors, right? And here we have Jerry again talking about exclusionary practice, reflecting on his exclusionary practices. Jerry noted how his practices also hindered Black boys' interactions with their peers. So here we have this restriction of interaction. So this restriction of interaction has everything to do with how teachers restrict with whom Black boys can play. And this is what he says. He acknowledged, did I still have behavior problems because they are antsy about being still all day and now they have to sit on the wall and watch their friends play in the only 30 minutes of the whole day that they get to play with their friends? So again, he was restricting the play, their interactions with their friends when he had them to sit on the wall or to stand against the wall, I should say. And then we have Karen, who also builds on Jerry's comment about restricting the interactions with students. So during a focus group discussion, Karen admitted that she restricted Black boys' interaction and use of weapon play in her classroom. So this interaction was not solely about limiting interaction with other individuals, but also limiting interactions with the kinds of play materials that Black boys can use during play. So, and this is what she says. And then with Black boy play, specifically, I'm like having trouble kind of like putting into words my experience with it. I think Jerry hit it on it, where it's like Black boys are seen as rough very quickly, whereas girls will be seen as like, oh, like she's like just being like sassy, or like it seems like it's written off more. And then so I saw a lot of it, like just roughhousing or something that, and this is a kind of a personal thing I'm uncomfortable with. I don't allow like gunplay in my room. So a lot of times, because they pick like sticks or something and pretend it's a gun, and I'll be like, hey, please don't do that at school. So here, she not only restricts her Black boys from playing with individuals, but she restricts their interactions with the kinds of with toys that are imaginary toys that they can use, and particularly with guns. And I really problematize her statement because we know that white boys play with guns all the time, and they're never subjected to the kinds of scrutiny that Black boys are subjected to when they play with guns or weapons that they imagine to be guns. So I think here Karen is prioritizing her own personal experiences, not understanding that there's some children who are afforded the opportunity to play with weapons that they imagine are guns, and other children who aren't afforded the same kinds of opportunities to play with toys that they create as weapons. Right? And so here it's important to acknowledge what I'm calling the anti-Black misandric restrictions of Black boyhood play. And what this basically says is that early childhood teachers are complicit in basically restricting spatially, interactionally, and temporally the ways in which Black boys play in early childhood classrooms. And basically, this is sending a message to the Black boys about how undesirable they are in play spaces, how they do not and cannot have access to play in recreation and liberatory ways, right? And so we have to be conscious about the ways in which we're complicit as early childhood educators in upholding this anti-Black misandric restrictions of Black boyhood play. So given the Yale Childhood Study and given my own work and other studies that are bringing attention to the injustices of Black boyhood play, I wanted to respond by developing a pedagogical and theoretical framework that can help us better understand Black boyhood play. And so I developed this pedagogical and theoretical tool called BlackboyCrit. Right? And so BlackboyCrit, I will explain shortly, but I want to first share the foundations of BlackboyCrit. And it's BlackboyCrit, PlayCrit is grounded in three important critical theories that shapes this whole notion of BlackboyCrit. It is first grounded in Black critical theory, and I will talk a little bit about that shortly, Black male studies, and anti-Black spatial imagining. Black critical theory is a theoretical framework that focuses on and prioritizes what scholars suggest is anti-Blackness. And anti-Blackness is a particular focus on the racialized experiences of Black people in America. We know that all marginalized groups face discrimination, face racism, but Black critical theory prioritizes the discrimination and racial discrimination of Black people, right? And so whereas critical race theory, that is now a hot topic in society, focuses on a general critique of race and discrimination of marginalized people, Black critical theory focuses on the specific ways that Black people and children are racially discriminated against. And then there's Black male studies introduced by philosopher Dr. Tommy Curry. And Dr. Tommy Curry focuses on the racialized and gendered violence that is institutionalized that Black boys and men face in American society. Whereas Black critical theory emphasizes anti-Blackness, Black male studies emphasizes anti-Black misandry. It's the racial and gender victimization of Black boys and men, right? And so Dr. Curry argues that this particular disgust and disdain of Black boys and men is institutionalized in American laws and policies and even school policies. And so that explains why Black boys are oftentimes mistreated, because anti-Black misandry is foundational to everything that exists in American society, every institution, including early childhood education. Why we have this disproportionate number of Black boys in early childhood education who are removed from those spaces and who then enter into the criminal justice system is because of anti-Black misandry, this racialized and gendered violence that negatively impact the schooling experiences of Black boys. And then Dr. DeMarcus Jenkins introduces this concept of anti-Black spatial imaginary. He draws on Black geography scholarship. And what he argues is that wherever the Black body is located or exists, it is seen as being out of place. It is seen as non-human. It is seen as not deserving to exist in a particular place, right? So anti-Black spatial imaginary has everything to do with the positionality of Black folks, the location of Black folks, and how the location of Black bodies lead to anti-Blackness, and in this case, because we're focusing on Black boys, anti-Blackness injury. So collectively, these three theories are what I use to construct what I call Black play crit. And so Black play crit has three developing ideas. The first one is what I call the idea of play not. The next is called the idea of play past, play present, and future nexus. And the last, and certainly not least, is called the public philosophy of Black boyhood play. And I want to briefly explain each of these developing ideas. The first one, play not, helps us to understand why Black boys aren't afforded the right to play in recreation, much like their counterparts, right? And so this notion of play not helps us to see that because of the stereotypes and biases that we have about Black boys, it limits the ways in which they can play. It limits their access to play and recreation, right? And so this notion of play not only deals with the stereotypes and biases of Black boys, it also helps us to understand that it's not so much that Black boys aren't afforded play and recreation, but the ways in which that we socially constructed the Black boy body, it takes away their innocence, right? It takes away from them being seen as children. For example, Tamir Rice, who was playing with a toy gun in an open carry state of Ohio, was gunned down in seconds of cops' arrival to the park. A citizen had called in to say that there was a young man who was brandishing a gun in the park. Unfortunately, Tamir was not a man, he was a child, right? And so this idea of play not focuses on the Black boy body as socially constructed as dangerous, right? And so people would say that, oh, Tamir was gunned down because he was playing with a toy gun. It was not because he was playing with a toy gun. It's because the Black boy body is socially constructed as a weapon, is seen as dangerous. It is seen as a gun that warrants to be taken out, right? So this idea of play not deals with the biases and stereotypes and the social construction of the Black boy body. And the next tenet, or the next developing idea of Black play crit, is this notion of play past, play present, and future nexus, right? And so what I argue here is that we have to take a historical gaze. We have to understand the history of the play experience of Black children to understand their present and future play realities. In other words, we have to go back to the enslavement plantation. When enslaved children played, and when they were afforded time to play, they played with white children, not to freely play, but they played with white children to learn English so that they can take those language skills back to their parents who were attempting to free themselves from the enslavement plantation, right? So to be honest, Black children were never afforded the right to play. Their play experiences were tied to this act of trying to free themselves from a white supremacist system of enslavement. And so we have to use that history to understand that Black children will never be afforded the right to play because historically they have always been denied play and recreation during enslavement, right? And so this tenet of play past and play present and future nexus ties the past to the present and the future to help us understand why Black boys experience anti-Blackness injury during their play experiences. And last, and certainly not least, the third developing idea is this notion of the public philosophy of Black boyhood play. Because we have these deficit views of Black boyhood play, I'm encouraging us to engage in a paradigm shift, to really think about Black boyhood play from a strength-based perspective, right? Really avoid seeing Black boyhood play as stereotypical, but really acknowledging the rich history of Black boyhood and Black boyhood play, and really honoring the play styles and behaviors that Black boys currently engage in. And this will not only help us to shift our perspectives, our views, our perceptions of Black boys, but it will also help us shift our views and perspectives about the ways in which they play. So collectively, these three development ideas make what I call Black Play Crit. So where do we go from here? In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote a book called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos and Community. And in the book, he argued for the importance of valuing the humanity of those who have been racially marginalized and discriminated against in American society. He also promulgated the importance of justice. So drawing on this idea of honoring full humanity and promoting justice, I want to say that we too can center justice and honor the full humanity of Black boys as we allow them to play freely, much like their counterparts. And so I'm sure some of you want to know what you can do to begin to honor the full humanity and to honor justice of Black boyhood play. Here's what you can do, right? And I think it first starts with a self-examination, right? Acknowledging and confronting those biases and stereotypes that you may first have of Black boys, and then secondly, their play styles and behaviors. So what I'm encouraging you to do here is to ask yourself the why and where questions. Why do I view Black boys in this way? Why do I feel this way about Black boyhood play? And then where does this come from? Where did I learn these stereotypes and biases, right? So self-reflect, right? And then secondly, listen to Black boys. Black boys have so much to say, but we oftentimes silence their voices because we don't see them as having perspectives or insights, right? So it's very important that we listen to Black boys, and they'll be able to tell you, about their play styles and behaviors and why they're engaging in play in the way that they are. And then I'm also asking us to create humanizing and affirming and liberatory play spaces in our classrooms. And what I mean by that is providing opportunities in and beyond our classroom to allow Black boys to play, but also allow them to play and allow them to infuse their own social identities into their play experience without policing their play styles and behaviors. Most teachers, and particularly early child teachers, have a tendency to police Black boyhood play, right? They see it as dangerous, they see it as rough, etc. But allow Black boys to play, allow them to play freely. And also create multiple opportunities across the early child curriculum to infuse play, right? I said earlier that play is being taken away from early child education and being replaced with academic experiences. But we should see every academic opportunity as an opportunity to engage Black boys in play experiences. To be honest, early childhood education should be nothing but play, because children learn so much about themselves through play and recreation. And I'm also going to ask you to continue to educate yourself on Black boyhood play. There's an abundance of resources that is starting to acknowledge and honor the full humanity of Black boyhood play. I'm going to ask you to start educating yourself by reading those articles and those papers and those books about Black boyhood play. And I have two resources that you can perhaps use to begin your journey of educating yourself on Black Boyhood Play. And it is my sole author book titled Toward a Black Boy Crit Pedagogy, which talks about not only the experiences of Black boys in early childhood classrooms, but also Black male teachers and how they curate spaces in early childhood education for Black boys to play. And recently, in this, you could get this book on Amazon via pre-order. I co-authored this book with Dr. Gloria Boutie and Dr. Kamanya Winterhoyt on the revolutionary love for early childhood classrooms. And we have chapters on honoring the full humanity of Black children's play. So these could be great resources to start your journey of learning to undo the injustices and to confront the injustices of Black boyhood play in early childhood education. Thank you so much for your time. And I may be contacted here at Nathaniel Bryan at austin.utexas.edu. I would like to come out to your schools and speak at your conferences to support you in curating those spaces that confront the injustices of Black boyhood play. Thanks again.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bryan. I want to apologize to our audience beforehand. We got about 12 to 10 minutes. We want to get into some very good questions. We have lots and lots of questions. We won't be able to get through them all, so I apologize in advance. But before we get to the questions, I have an important link in the chat that I'd like for everyone to click on and store in the background. This is our July Learning Cafe survey. It's very important. It's from surveys like this that we were able to get feedback from you and invite people like Dr. Bryan back. We want to hear back from you and figure out what speakers you want, what topics you want. It's very important that you fill out that survey. But without further ado, let's get back to the informative and insightful topic at hand from Dr. Bryan. Are you ready? We got some questions. We're going to try to get through as much as we can. All right, the first one we have, I'm interested in how you think that anti-Black language pedagogy contributes to teachers wanting to eradicate Black boyhood play. Could you speak more towards that?
That's very powerful. First and foremost, we have to think about people's perception of Black language, right? So it's hard to separate language from Black people. And so if you have a very deficit view of Black people, of course, you're going to have a deficit view of Black language, right? And because people generally see, again, Black boyhood play as already dangerous, right? And so when Black boys use African-American language or Black language during play, it's seen as even more violent or more dangerous, right? Because people already have these negative views and perceptions of Black people and their language. So coupling that with play, it further exacerbates the injustices of Black boyhood play, right?
Bryan, thank you so much for that. The next question, are there any recommended screenings that would help in the assessment of play areas? Will these be applicable to both educational and outpatient clinics?
That's a very good question. I'm not currently aware of any specific screenings of play areas, but I think frameworks like BlackboyCrit could be foundational to helping us understanding play spaces. So we take those theories that I share with you. We take BlackCrit, the Black critical theory. We take Black male studies, and we take anti-Black spatial imaginary as theoretical framework. We can use them as analytical tools to examine our play spaces. So we can now ask ourselves the question, okay, how is anti-Black misandry being promulgated in this play area? How is anti-Blackness being promoted in this play area? And then we also have to take an intersectional gaze too. We have to think about even Blackness and disabilities. How is this space anti-Black and anti-children, Black children with disabilities? So I think those frameworks that I share with you can really be used to help you create a screening tool to examine or to screen play spaces.
Thank you so very much. Do you believe there are non-intellectual differences between boys and girls in the classroom setting?
I think it's the way that we understand boyhood and girlhood, right? I'm not one who buy into this one-dimensional social construction of what it means to be a boy or a girl. To be a boy is diverse, again, like I said earlier, and to be a girl is diverse, right? And we, as human beings, we're all diverse, we're all different, right? You know, I'm not like Elijah, as although we're both Black men, we're different in the ways in which we carry ourselves, the way that we express our masculinity, etc. We have to learn to value multiple masculinities or multiple ways to be a boy and a girl, right? And not hold on to the socialization of these one-dimensional views of Black boyhood, right? So value those boys who may, you know, express themselves differently than other boys, and value those boys who may not enjoy playing basketball or football, right? You know, so I think it starts with, you know, really grappling with our own socialization and pushing back and contesting that socialization to begin to value the expression of Black boyhood in multiple ways.
Thank you. I very much agree with that reply to that question. And thank you for that question from our audience. What is your thought on not allowing young children in early childhood centers to play because they need to catch up on work?
I tackle that question. I think it's dehumanizing, right? It's taking away from childhood innocence and creativity. When we truncate or restrict childhood play, we're basically restricting their academic and social development. Remember earlier, I talked about all of those benefits of a childhood play. So when we say that children cannot and should not play, we're negatively impacting their academic experiences. And the purpose of early child education is to provide children the requisite skills and prerequisite skills they need to successfully navigate schools. And if we hinder those academic skills by truncating play or restricting play, we're doing them damage as early child education, right? We're creating conditions where we're not affording them upward mobility. So it's dangerous, it's dehumanizing, right? And so we have to be very careful about, you know, restricting childhood play and early child education, because we're creating conditions where we're negatively impacting their upward mobility and future life outcomes.
That is very profound. It deals with building the awareness that we want to bring to the attention of educators, providers. This next question kind of builds on that, because it's all right. What about the children? In what ways can we empower our children to overcome these injustices and these aspects that are written within institutions already? Before we can change them, how should we equip our children in entering these spaces?
That's a really good question. I do think we should make children aware of the institutional inequities and injustices that exist in our society, but I don't think it's the right and responsibility of Black and brown children to take on the burden of confronting those injustices. Because when we think about it, when we think about white children never had the burden of dealing with these kinds of confronting institutional injustices. They can freely engage in childhood innocence, they can freely play, they can freely enjoy childhood. But it's so sad that we have to impose upon Black children these demands and burdens of confronting systems of inequities that they did not create. Right?
Yes.
I know historically, you know, children have always been on the front lines of social justice movement, including the civil rights movement, and rightfully so. But still, I don't think Black children should carry that burden of having to confront these systems that they did not create. And to be honest, Black and brown people should not have to confront these systems that they did not create, right? You know, I think colonizers, white colonizers, and and the people who benefit from these systems should be responsible for overhauling and dismantling these systems.
Thank you for speaking on that, Dr. Bryan. Allison Davis, if you are there, we see that you have a hand raised up. If you have a question for our speaker, we will take it at that moment. Are you there, Allison? No question? If not, we have Connie Reynolds with a hand raised.
Yes, I'd like to ask, how do we take the buzzword of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which seems to be whatever to their policy, but it's not a reality? So how do we transition from just putting in what is politically correct to actually making it an action item in the real life presentation of our academics and our social and emotional development within the classroom?
That's a really, really great question. And you're absolutely right. We are so committed to writing policies and mission statements and mantras that suggest that we're doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belong. And we know we're not. And so my answer to that question is just simply do the work. Right? You know, don't wait for somebody to create a mission statement that says that we're going to do the work. Do the work, and do the work in such a way that will bring along other people who will understand the importance of doing the work. We have to be about doing the business of DEI rather than pontificating about DEI. My thing is, and particularly in this age, political moment where we're banning DEI offices, dismantling DEI offices and policies, it's not going to stop me from doing the work of DEI because it's naturally who I am, right? It is my right and responsibility to ensure that I'm curating spaces to honor and value the full humanities of those who have been historically marginalized. And that is not done just because there's a policies that say I should do it. It comes from my moral compass, right? And so my moral compass gives me the permission to do the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion without being encouraged by some policy that we know that isn't going to get the work done. So be about the work of DEI. Unapologetically too. Unapologetically do this work. Because we're in a moment now where we're taking steps backwards. And if we are not going to do the work in this moment, a time where we're all being confronted and challenged in different ways, we're going to go back to a society that's going to harm all of us. Because it's important to understand Black and brown people aren't the only peoples being negatively impacted by these moves to ban DEIs. Everyone is being impacted. Think about the messages that we're sending to white children, right? When we ban policies, right? And I like the words of Paulo Freire. He said that the oppressor is not only oppressing those he oppresses, he's also oppressing himself, right? And so we have to think about when we don't do this work, how we are also oppressing ourselves.
Absolutely. Dr. Bryan, we can't thank you enough for your time, your insight, intelligence, and awareness, and sharing that with our Learning Cafe community, our Learning Cafe audience. Thank you once again for hanging in there for our July presentation. We hope to see you next month. Be well, be wise, be aware, and we hope that you tune in the future. Tell a friend and tell a friend to come on to the ECLC Learning Cafe.
My email, someone is asking for my email. Could you ensure that they get that?
Absolutely. And if in any information, resources, slides that you want to share with us, we will be sending a follow-up message with this recording to everybody who registered.
Great.
All right. Enjoy. Have a wonderful day.